we don't want to remove every discomfort from their life. I think sometimes we even interpret love as meaning I'm never going to let you hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's our natural impulse too, is to try to remove any pain or frustration.
Yeah. Which really is doing them a disservice, because they are going to feel and experience pain in their life. And if we haven't taught them how to feel that and to work through that emotion and to know that that emotion's okay and I will get through it and God's going to give me tools to work through that, it does them a disservice.
You're listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust. Welcome to the Seasons of Money and Marriage series. Part 2 of the series is Married with Kids. On this panel, we have Brian and Jen Goins and Ed and Amy Uzinski, hosted by Blue Trust Senior Financial Advisor, Marshall Potter. This is a great look into how to balance being married while raising children. This episode is filled with lots of value, so get ready to take notes. Let's listen in now.
Welcome to our second session of Seasons of Money and Marriage. We're excited to have you join us for a discussion around the life of married with kids. Today we have Ed and Amy Uzinski joining us, as well as Brian and Jen Goins. Welcome, couples.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us back.
Absolutely. So both couples have a lot of experience with family life. We're excited to hear about their experience teaching couples, but also just kind of practical life and how you've lived through this stage of life. So tell us a little bit about your family. We start with Ed and Amy.
Yeah. So Ed and I live in the Dayton, Ohio area. We have been married 24 years. We have 4 children, 23, 21, 18, and 13. And we have been a part of the Family Life Weekend to Remembers for over 20 years, along with working with a sports ministry called Athletes in Action.
Awesome.
Okay.
Brian and Jen.
You want me to start off?
Yeah, you
Okay. We're Brian and Jen Goins, like you already said. And we have 3 children. We live in Melbourne, Florida.
Awesome. Well, for today, we're going to obviously jump into Married with Kids, and y'all are both living that right now. Lots of age diversity there. I think about this season as one that puts a lot of demand on your time from a lot of different directions. Presses on your time margin, presses on your financial margin. So talk about that. Like, what have you experienced? What maybe has felt like the biggest tension that you're dealing with at this stage? Brian and Jen, you want to start us off?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Just, it's like whenever we were talking about newlyweds and those with young kids on that last episode, and I just think about how you're so physically exhausted during that stage. You don't get enough sleep. You're dealing with sickness. You don't even, everything feels blurry in life. But when you get to the teenage stage and kids in that elementary on up, you just start getting emotionally exhausted because they're dealing and changing so much as human beings. Yeah. And you're trying to navigate those waters. And they're all in different things. And so you still have some of that physical exhaustion, but I think it's just your margin really decreases because you're having more conversations. There's things that you don't understand. You're dealing with somebody who's becoming their own person that has their own desires. Their selfishness is coming out on full display, and there's higher stakes when it comes to discipline. So I feel like that's a huge challenge. And then on top of that, to add even more weight, put more weight on the bar, you're also dealing with just lack of financial margin because things just get more expensive. Yeah. Food bills get more expensive. I mean, you guys have 3 boys, and so what that Costco aisle feels, that haul that you have to get at Costco feels like. Sports, the choices that you start making really can have some significant financial ramifications.
Absolutely.
I think one thing that has been a little bit of a challenge is with 4 kids, and even if you have 2, they're so different. And so the way that you parent one doesn't work with the next one. Yeah. And then the next one needs to be talked to this way, but you communicate this way really well with this one. And so I think navigating the kids and figuring out how did God create them and how do they receive input? How do I need to talk with this one? So I think that for me has been a challenge.
Yeah.
So
You have total control over them when they're babies. They're totally dependent on you. But progressively as they get older, you have less and less control. I don't know what a better word is. Control, less influence in some ways. They're making their own decisions. They're not doing the things that you thought that you had taught them to do, which is a really psychologically stressful thing to try to work through as an individual, as a couple.
Yeah.
We process, like we talk with Brian and Jen all the time, just about different situations that we've been in, and you just don't know what the right thing to do is.
Yeah.
I wish the 5th and 6th grade years were like 4 years.
Yes.
Because they're old enough to where like you're not totally dependent. You're not changing diapers. They're fun. They can go do a lot of fun activities, but they don't
sleep
have
through the night.
They sleep through the night.
Yeah.
They like to watch what you watch,
Yeah.
or like you can watch fun stuff together, but they're not surly and moody and frustrating. Not that all teenagers are bad. We love our teenagers, but there's just something that happens right when that puberty hits.
They're trying to figure themselves
They
out,
are.
right? They're
Yeah.
going through their own insecurities. Like we all know what that is, but they're living in our house.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Trying to do
you,
that.
so you have to feel it, while they're trying to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think of, a lot of life is discerning where to take action and what matters and what you can influence, right? So more control, less control now. What are some practices that you maybe have learned or are learning in this about how to handle this, knowing that there's less that you can control, but still you would say you felt like is a wise perspective in terms of engagement? How has your parenting changed as a result?
I think we kind of like what we've talked about before is setting up those habits. Like our children know, our kids have known what our habits are and kind of what our non-negotiables are. Things like having dinner most nights. Anytime that we can have dinner together, we have dinner together. We are the best that we can. We had one kid who just was really just sleep schedules were very difficult, but we take phones away at 10 o'clock. So there's not that temptation to be up until 1 or 2 in the morning on phones.
Yeah.
And our kids just know that now. And there's no phones at the dinner table. Technology is obviously a huge issue that we have with our kids that we didn't really deal with. So we're all navigating how to control that in a way. And the thing is that there's so many different ways to do it. And it's not, you can be black and white, or you can kind of see some gray in how to do that. So that maybe is a whole other podcast, but it's something to think about, that there's going to be some navigation on that. And so just setting some of those things, we also try to be the family that has fun together. And so our kids want to come back. They want to be a part of that. And we started that at a very young age where it wasn't really an option. We're going to play a family game. And if you don't want to play, you're going to play. Again, it's not, we're not like, but so now our kids are used to that. And so that's something that draws them back as they've gotten older, is like, we want to play together. We want to put those distractions away. And even one of our sons, our middle son, like his friends were like, we want to go to your house because your house is where we play games together.
Wow.
Our oldest daughter, that wasn't the case. So it's not every time, but it's just like but our oldest daughter still, she comes home and wants to do fun things with her family, whether that is playing games or doing an activity together or watching a movie together, even if it does have to do with technology or something. But anyway, I think those are just some of the habits that we have set out. We are a Sunday morning, this is when we go to church together as a family, and we set kind of some of that spiritual. We didn't really force our kids to do other things if they didn't want to. So if they wanted to go on a mission trip by themselves, they could, but some kids chose to and some kids chose not to, because you also don't want to be this family like my parents made me do these spiritual things all the time. But our one thing that we have chosen a family, again, right or wrong, is like, we're going to go to church together on Sunday mornings when we're together, when we're able to do it. And it's a pretty big priority in our family. And now, even though our daughter, when she went off to college, I'm kind of getting off maybe on a little bit of rabbit trail, but like she chose for a while not to do that. And we were like, but you're in college now. You're starting to make your own choices.
Yeah.
But now she's come back around. And now she's like, no, this is what we do. And it's been kind of ingrained in her. And now she has her own faith story. And so giving them the opportunity to have a faith story, but not forcing that on them is pretty important too.
That's goal. And I think sounds like a shorter list of who you were, but some core practices and values
Right.
that they could live out in their own way and make choices around, but it was clear who you were and you had that vision for the long term.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Our dinner table brings us together again and again and again. That's where we meet. Even if our kids go away for a while, they come back and they know that there's going to be a great dinner on the table. And that's where we can, again, we put away those distractions and we have moments of eye-to-eye contact, talking about our day, talking about life, laughing, having fun, enjoying a meal together is really important to our family and has been a great place for us to just have that connection. Yeah. Like come to the table is really important for us.
Love it. And you were saying last night about the thing Max Lucado says about what every person longs to hear. There are 3 phrases, and it just made me think of.
Yeah.
It was, I love you, I forgive you, and supper's ready.
Yes.
Right? And look, Max Lucado said that's what the gospel is. It's God saying, I love you, I forgive you, and come be welcome. Come join me. Come to the table. Yeah. And eat. Everybody wants that.
I think every adult is asking that, but every kid is asking that too.
Yes.
Do you love me? Will you love me no matter what I do?
Yes.
And am I still welcome here? Yes. Yes.
How you guys manage that? Because all your kids play sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how have you done that in your
We've
evenings?
worked it out. Like, okay, for right now, we only have 1 kid at home. But even when we had 3, we still managed at least maybe 3 nights a week. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it doesn't happen. Right. But now we kind of have it worked out where we only have 1 kid. This are details. But for example, Gibson has soccer right during dinner time. Yeah. So I drop him off and I come home. And again, this might not work for everyone, but this is what works for us. You have to find out what works for you.
Yeah.
And Brian picks him up. And while Brian's picking him up, I'm making dinner. Yeah. And so we have dinner a little bit later, like 7:35, which, when you're younger, you're like eating at 5 with your younger kids. Yeah. And so maybe it's a little bit later, those 3 nights a week. But, we just kind of work it out and plan it out. I plan it out every week. And Brian helps me figure that out and where we're going to be and just figuring it out in every season. It looks different.
You just prioritize being in the same space to each other when it's time to eat.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to, and we do a lot of calendar looking, like, okay, let's look at this week again. Where are the spots?
Yeah.
Because they do change and like, oh, I forgot about that game or whatever. And it's like, we have to keep reminding each other, oh, I got this women's thing at the church, or I've got this guy, I'm meeting with these guys over here. So just constantly reminding so we can make that a priority.
Yeah, so it's a priority of ours.
So some things I'm hearing, I think it sounds like you had a very intentional desire for this stage. So kind of what was our vision? What were our values? You've clearly resourced your calendar to make sure that's happening as well. There's also the finances. This is an expensive stage. So talk a little bit about that. How have you managed the financial and the getting that aligned with the stage?
Yeah.
Man, like I'm just sitting here thinking it was never always the same. Like there's a part of it's like every season's just a little different. And so it's going, okay, we wanted to make sure our kids could choose one sport. So it wasn't like they weren't in, 3 or 4 things all at once, so that's part of it is like, what's the thing that you're going to end up doing? And so for our kids, they love soccer. So they and our daughter loved volleyball. And so we knew that we couldn't afford every little activity. So it's like, you got to pick a couple. Yeah. And so it is making some of those choices. And then you're just looking at the hardest thing. We were talking about this even before the podcast. It's like the hardest thing about this stage is forecasting that like the club team costs X, $1,500, whatever it might be. And you're going, okay, how do I save up for those things? And you, Marshall, you were even given the advice that you like to give to clients. Like you've got to figure out your own capital budget almost.
Yeah, almost like a 5-year. There's our normal monthly living budget, but during this stage especially, club activities, you want to have the pantry full so your home's attractive so the kids are coming over, all the maintenance. It's an investment strategically, but if we're not intentional about putting the money out there, it can be a very stressful stage. And so, I would say, as a part of doing your regular budgeting, there also needs to be this almost carve out that's happening to make this a rich stage of life.
Well, and I think one thing we like to say often is like, I can tell what you value by what you pay for, what you sign up for, what you cheer for, right? All of these things, somebody's signing the form. And so what I think ends up happening is you feel a lot of pressure to be conformed what Romans 12:1 and 2. It's like we can be pressed into the mold of our culture of like, I've got to be in the best school. I've got to be in with the best tutors. I've got to be in with the best club teams. I've got to be in. And you just feel like if I'm not, my kids are going to fall behind.
Yeah.
And you forget that really the best environment for your kids is actually not outside the home, but inside the home. So how do I value and sign up for, pay for, cheer for the family vacation, the dinners that we're going to have, the times around the where the friends come over and we play the game.
Yeah.
Man, if all of your calendar is cluttered up with all their activities, then you're signing up for all that, but you're saying yes, that's costing you a yes of a value that you really want, right? So at some point, you've got to teach your kids and yourself how to say no.
Right.
And I think we have done that sometimes, not every time, but we'll talk about it with our kids where we'll say, okay, if you want to do this sport, this is how much the fees are cost and the shoes and the hotels away, which it's not a guilt trip. It's just reality. This is how much it costs. And so then when we can't do this, or when they want to buy something extra, we can just say, here are the options. If we're going to choose this, we're going to have to say no over here as well. So bringing the kids into some of those decisions as well, and not just making them, again, we've done it well sometimes. We haven't done it every time, but to bring the kids into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Practically speaking, they start to understand things have a cost.
Yes.
Absolutely. Do you get into the stewardship side with them in those conversations? Or what are you kind of saying to your kids from that
We
standpoint?
talk about that all the time with the kids, about giving.
About giving. I mean, that's just the thing where I think God has shown up the most and has honored a choice for me early on. And even when I was in college, I had men around me that encouraged me to give to church, be generous with other people, and to even go beyond what you think is normal. I was super encouraged to go beyond. And when I've done that, or as I've done that, I just feel like God has always surprised us with money we didn't expect. God has allowed my computer to last for a decade instead of 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I see God's blessing on our financial life that goes way beyond what we make for ourselves or are able to produce for ourselves. And I think that's biblical. I think he says, try me, see what happens. If you give to me first, watch and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I talk to the kids about that all the time.
Yeah. But again, it's one of those things where it has to be their decision. Now that they're 16, 18, 20, they're making the money, and we can encourage, but it has to be something that really does flow from their heart.
Right.
So
somewhere in there, the lecturing has had to become minimal, and the question asking and trying to get where's their mind at in this, and how are they going to own this for themselves, which has been hard for me because I'm a speech giver.
Yeah.
You know, and there is a point where you realize that's not working.
Yeah.
Amy's been really good for this. That's not going to work with her. Okay. So you may do that just for your own selfish, because you want to get it out. It's not going to be effective. What's effective is slowly letting her tell us what's going on. And of course, we're still going to influence, but it's more of a judo move.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to let her take us down the path, and then we'll just insert things along the way. That's really hard. I think probably for a lot of us, it's hard.
I think one good thing that's happened in our relationship that I'm so thankful for Brian, and because we've always kind of said that I was really good with the younger kids because I'm pretty black and white. I can say no, and if they beg, I'm like, nope, this is what I said. and
She does the same with me.
and he would kind of drive me crazy. It's also caught us a ton, so much frustration because people have this all the time. You parent differently. And you come, whether it's from your family of origin or just your thoughts, your beliefs. And I mean, it can be a really hard thing to watch your children maybe be yelled at by a parent that's not you, or, being manipulated, and that's like a whole different thing. But, like there's times when I didn't appreciate how he was parenting our younger kids because he was more like, how does that make you feel? Or let me ask you a bunch of questions. And I'm like, no, just say no and move on or whatever. Yeah. And so that works really pretty well when they're younger, but then as they get older, that does not work as well. And so I've so appreciated him in the teenage years where he is like, no, we need to talk to our kids about this. This is a hard issue. This is something that we need to ask questions about. We need to make sure that they know where we stand, but we need to be very gentle about this. And so I've watched the kids just gravitate towards him in older years because my sergeant, this is how it's going to be, is not working anymore. And they have their own thoughts and their own feelings, and they're trying to figure stuff out and to be gentle and caring about that while still being firm and giving consequences has been really good. And I think we've appreciated our differences instead of being so frustrated with differences.
And I was going to say, and there's times where the kids do just need a hard no. And it's like, you got to give the hard no. And sometimes I can be reticent to do that. And if we're not careful, that becomes a block right here. And it's like the kids most need to see a unified front. So getting on the same page about why we're going to have this conversation, sometimes it's good just to see, even before you discipline a kid, let's talk about this and then go at it together.
Yeah, good. You're always doing both, but the scales change maybe as they get older. So both being that you're giving direction, you're drawing hard lines versus asking questions and being maybe softer, cushioning it. It just has to flip. You're still doing both. Because I could just hear somebody thinking that we're saying, well, that's how the culture works. We don't draw lines anywhere. It's all, we just want to coddle you and make you feel good. And it's like, no, we're trying to be wise in nurturing our child's heart and give direction in ways that they'll be able to receive it. Right?
And I think one thing I wish we had done a little bit more of, even as our kids, now we got 2 in college, is do a little bit more of the transparency that you were talking about in terms of money. And where does it go? How does it, what are the 5 uses of money? Doing a better job of discipling those kids on letting them get to the place where they're owning their own money by the time they leave the house versus they're in college now and figuring it out. And because they're going to end up, all they do is they call back to you going, I need this. It's like, okay, well, great. When are you going to save up for that? Or when are you going to, but if they had realized that a little bit sooner, it would just been better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I share a quick story?
Sure.
So just this last week, we had a friend over that's in the financial business, and he was hanging out with our 18-year-old son. And our friend left and went back home, and our son came to us and said, hey, can I get his number? And I said, oh, sure, but why do you need Chris's number? And he said, well, Chris and I were talking about retirement investment, opportunities, and I'd really like to get going on that. And I just was like,
and Chris wasn't trying to sell him a product or anything, right? It was nothing weird.
Trust guy?
Yes. And I just thought, I don't remember the last time I've looked into my retirement portfolio. And Jack at 18 is starting to set it up. Now, he's a little bit different. None of our other kids have ever asked that question. But I love that he's starting to think about it. And it was because a friend of ours had mentioned it to him, and it got the wheels going. So I think some of our kids are wanting to understand money and how does it work and how do I, make it work for the long term. So
I don't know what the right age is, but it seems like there's a reticence I feel this in myself and even amongst friends of not answering a kid's questions, like when they ask, how much do you make? Or how much did our house cost, Dad? Like these questions have been coming out lately, and I feel a little hitch inside myself. Like I'm afraid of what they're going to do with that information. Are they going to put it on social media? Are they going to use it to compare with other kids?
My daddy makes this.
I go negative with it right away. And so there's something to that. I'm not saying we shouldn't pay any attention to that, but it causes me to think I actually need to be initiating these conversations with them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing you even saying. We should. They should be learning that from us.
I love from you, but also the example of Chris. Think about community, and is there another dad who's an expert or mom or somebody, and you can get them connected, and that begins to help them see, I think, that faith is beyond what mom and dad say it should be. There are other families that believe this too.
Yeah, that's good.
Or
I think
maybe
it's the reality of a community of believers, because there's no way that we're going to be able. We're so deficient. Like
we all have
we just realize at times we just need God's mercy and God's grace in all of this, because we fail so many times. And we're not perfect by any means. And so it is great to have other people. I know we've had Ed and Amy over, and our middle son has really resonated with Ed and has said, I just remember when Ed said this to me, and we're like, either we've been saying that for years and you didn't listen, or Ed has some wisdom that we don't have. And it's been great to have that. And I know my daughter has loved some of my older friends, and So, but it's because I have Christian friends around me. So the community of faith is really important, that they can help in this way, because we're going to have deficiencies and we're not going to be able to do everything. And so what a great thing to have, to rub your children's shoulders up against other people's shoulders that you love and respect and admire. So we can all just continue to learn from each other.
So I got an idea for you, Marshall.
All right.
Okay, because I think there's no market for this right now that I know of. I think you guys could lead out. All our camps every summer, kids are going to camp. They're going to soccer camps. They're going to family
Music camps.
music camps. All great.
Theater camp.
Most of them won't become a professional athlete. They won't become a professional musician. They can't go to summer camp the rest of their life. What about a summer camp to teach our kids how to do finances? They could do the 5 ways where money needs to go after a week, because they're going to have to deal with money for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So if you guys would start that, we will send our kids.
Your
right now.
kids are not going to that.
My kids.
Jack will go.
Wait,
Jack will go.
I don't care. I'm gonna tell Jen's parenting move right here. No, you're going. You're going for a week.
We're gonna sit at a
You're
table.
going to Atlanta. You're gonna be with Marshall for a week.
Talk about
If
money.
We'll make it fun.
If you bring me on, we'll have loads of fun.
Right.
There we go.
Are there balls involved? Are
Right.
there lakes
She's the
in
camp
here?
director.
They could still play pickleball in the afternoon,
Yeah.
but in the morning.
Yes, but we're going to learn
Pickleball,
finances.
yeah.
Investing.
Can I attend camp?
Right.
Can I be your first camper?
Dad, can I just stay home and be grounded? I don't
Right.
want to do that.
Well, for kids on that track, we do have a wonderful internship program.
There you
go.
I
There you
just
go,
put a
Marshall.
plug in there,
That's great.
and we'll talk about the kids later.
Yes.
We can figure out something, I'm sure.
Yes, that's great.
So you also have multiple kids. So tell me about stewarding those relationships. I love the conversation about the heart and asking those questions. But how do you see the process as a couple of like, okay, child number 1, this is what I'm seeing. This is how we want to lean in here. Child number 2, tell me about that.
I think what Amy said was really good, just that every kid is different. Your goal as a parent is to be a detective, to understand how they are best wired by God. They are not made in your image. They are made in God's image. So I just get to steward that kid for 18 years, rent free, before we kick them out. Hopefully they can get on their own. But my role then is to steward God's gift to me. And too often as a parent, I really want my kid to be different, my kid to be in my image, what I really hope for them to enjoy. I wanted my kids to play basketball, they played soccer. I wanted my kids to play an instrument, they wanted to play, Spotify and soccer, exactly. And so it is more what makes them tick, how are they wired, how can I breathe life into the way that God already made them. And you don't do that without proximity. You don't do that without time. Someone once said it's like air increases with distance. And so the closer that I am with someone, the more truth I can really understand and see and how they're made. One guy I know that I always admired, he had 5 kids. And every week he would have a breakfast with one of his kids. So once every 5 weeks, he's having breakfast. It's just a rotation. And that just became a rhythm of their life. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't create the space for that proximity to happen, your kids will feel like strangers. And the depth of conversation will sacrifice.
I would also say a little warning to that is that we are also in a culture where our kids are so individual. And if you don't like this school, we'll go to a different school. And if you don't like this, we're going to do this. And then you spend all your time catering to that child's needs. And and that's a thing that's happening. And so there are times you're like, we're all going to the same school and you don't have to do that. I'm not,
right.
But there are times when you're like, no, we are all doing this together. And even if you don't like it, or if it's not perfect for you, we are getting so self-focused and we can be so individualized that there's a time where you might need to say, no, we're all doing this at the same time, or it might not be the best for this kid, but they're going to be okay. So there's like a little bit of a balance there, I think.
That's good.
That has gotten out of whack in our society because we can be so individualized. If my kid doesn't like this, we're going to move on.
Right.
We've got to make everything perfect for them so they can have their own truth and have their own, whatever. And it's like, nope, that's what we did. We moved to Little Rock and we allowed our daughter to choose the school, and it was a private school. And our other 2 kids, we had toured schools, and our 2 boys were like, but we like that one better. And we said, for the sanity of our lives, we are all going to go to the same school.
Yeah.
And so now if one child is like really, really struggling and there might be a different option, of course, consider that. But in general, are all kids, we're like, nope, for our sanity, that's
Yeah.
what we're going to do. And going back to the sports, our son is on a kind of a mediocre soccer team, and there's a better soccer team, but it's like 45 minutes away. We're like, for our sanity, we're not spending 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back in the car. He's going to be on the more mediocre team, team, and it's just going to make our lives so much better. And we can have dinner together because he's not in the car forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And that, I think the character development in those decisions, learning to think about others, great life lessons.
yeah, very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not all about you.
That's
when you
right.
talk about stewarding, I mean, I think we need to make sure that our kids always know that they're loved, that this is a place where they can be themselves, fully themselves, and be accepted. That's what I mean by that. Consistently, we want to communicate that. But at the same time, we don't want to, Jen, you just made me think of this. We don't want to remove every discomfort from their life. I think sometimes we even interpret love as meaning I'm never going to let you hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's our natural impulse too, is to try to remove any pain or frustration.
Which really is doing them a disservice because they are going to feel and experience pain in their life. And if we haven't taught them how to feel that and to work through that emotion and to know that that emotion's okay and I will get through it and God's going to give me tools to work through that, it does them a disservice to not let them feel some heat and some pain in life.
It's okay to sit the bench on this team right now because for whatever reason you're not playing.
Yeah.
Then we can change maybe at the end of the season, but I'm not just going to run in and take you out of it or confront the coach or, intervene in some way that's going to make sure that you don't feel this discomfort. It's okay for them to feel the discomfort. That's part of my stewardship.
Yeah. I think part of the stewardship, Brian, you had begun to allude to this, but you have always done such a great job of seeing our kids for how God created them and then almost speaking that into them, and so with our oldest who's so good relationally, we'll just sit down and we'll say, you do so good talking with adults, and we almost kind of speak that into them of saying, keep doing that. I see that God, this is how God has made you. Keep, what kind of job would work well with that? Because this is how God has created you. And then seeing them for each individuals, because they're not all good at the same thing, but seeing what they're good at and affirming that. You've always done a great job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say on that, just hitting on that, because one thing that's so easy for me to do, especially when teenagers, is it's so easy to see what they're doing wrong, and just how their world is really messing up my world, and I don't like that. And so when they do that, I'm quick to point out what they're doing wrong. I may not be as being quick as pointing out what they're doing right, and where do you see them bringing life into the world. And so trying to balance that. You still need to point out what they're doing wrong and they're being selfish, but I gotta make sure that I'm getting plenty of positivity of, man, this is where God's blessed you.
I think too, for single moms, single dads, if you don't have like someone's listening to this podcast and a single mom especially might be like, I wish I had someone like a Brian or Ed in my son's life or in my daughter's life. It's super important, again, to get into that community where you can have those opportunities to talk to a youth pastor or talk to another man or woman in the church that can just be around that person. And I think we as believers need to be on a lookout for those families. I know I've been convicted. We've had some people in our community that have experienced that and are like moving into that young man needs another man in his life. Because like what you were saying about we see that in you. We see that you're good at this. So many kids don't have that. It breaks my heart that they don't have a strong man or a strong woman. They need that. Yeah. I mean, our kids have had that and they've still kind of gone off the rails at times. Yeah. And I think, wonder if they didn't have that home to come back to. And a lot of them don't. And so we need to be pretty careful about that and proactive in thinking about that, of making our home a welcoming place for some of those younger kids who might need a man or a woman to say that into their lives and say, I see this in you.
Yes.
And, so.
We talk about not being stingy with our praise. It's something that Brian and I bounced around with each other, whether that's with our spouse, with our kids, with our friends. That sometimes we think positive things towards people, but we wait until their funeral to say them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so, you know, if I see this in Jen, why would I not say, Jen, I noticed this about you today, or that was great that you did when we speak at a conference or something. That was such a win. You know, you bring life to this moment. Like let's say it to each other. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, in the image of God, right? Speaking blessing over things. We get to be like him in that.
Well, the world is a hard place to live for all of us, and so we can give life to people. By the Spirit who's in us, who gives us security, who tells us that we're loved, who tells us that we're forgiven, right? All these spiritual truths that we can live in as a Christian. We should be able then to take that and bless other people out of that security. Again, I don't always feel that way. Sometimes I need it more than I'm able to give, but it's just a different way of living with our kids or whoever we're with.
I think about like in that faith and fear sometimes being in tension, right? And kids are getting older, the phases of life you guys are at. We hear the stereotype of helicopter parenting, right? Talk about letting go and faith and blessing in the process, and how you handle that with your kids as they're getting older. So you're letting them take more responsibility, risk more, deal with the consequences more. What does that look like?
I will never forget when my kids were little, I was a part of a women's study group that got together every Friday morning, like at 6:30, because that's the only time that would work for all of us. And my sweet mentor said to me early on, which I'm still trying to work out now as my kids are starting to enter college and teenage years, she said, Amy, you have got to cut the umbilical cord now. And she at that time had teenage kids. And because she said, they are going to do great things that you're going to puff yourself up for and think, look at my kid, look at how great he or she is, and they're doing this and they're doing that. She said, cut that cord. That really had nothing to do with you. But then on the reverse side of that, when they're coming home and they're in trouble in school or they're making poor choices.
They're drinking,
they're
smoking,
partying,
they're doing things in relationships that are going to scar them in different ways.
We need to cut that cord too. And just to realize, yes, we have influence on our children, but they are going to make their own decisions. And the quicker that we can realize those decisions don't reflect who I am as a person, who I am as a child of God, what God says is true about me doesn't play out in how my kids act.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Can I believe that God says, I am loved, I am forgiven, I am worthy, despite what these rascals are doing over here? And she just said, the earlier you can learn that, the more free I will be, we will be as parents, to just love them in the midst of their messes. As I realize I'm a mess, and realizing my kids are just as much of a mess.
That all sounds good, but I hate that. I hate that they won't do what I want them to do, right? Or what we think is best for them.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. Again, we'll all say yes to that, but we have to change. Just like we talked about in our last session about having to change in the way we live with each other. I think we have to change in the way we think about what our role is with these human beings that God has given us.
Yeah. I want to dig on that.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, because I agree, I love the heart. What does that look like in terms of your engagement, in terms of the handoffs, in terms of processing with your kids? What are you saying differently? What are you doing differently at this stage?
Yeah. I think you give them, it starts at home. It starts at giving their room.
Yeah. Responsibilities.
Like, you're responsible for this. You're responsible for your laundry. You're responsible for making your own lunch now. You're responsible for these certain chores or things like that. And if those aren't that's your responsibility, so then they can take those responsibilities and move them to the next stage. I know that we have, and we've also given consequences that if you're doing these things, then you're going to have these consequences. And
good or bad.
Yeah,
good or bad. If you keep consistently good on, we've said we expect your room, to be a certain way at a
visible
certain time. Yeah, visible. Yeah, we expect you to be able to walk into your room and be able to navigate in that place.
Not have to shower after we leave your room.
That would be nice. And so there are good consequences and there are bad consequences. And I think starting to get to the place where you can actually not latch your identity onto your kids' choices is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. But it's so helpful for our kids to go they're starting to make adult choices, and sometimes the choices they make have severe consequences. You know, when our kids got caught, vaping, and we had said that's not going to be what's going to be tolerated in our house. So we can get mad and get real angry and get real big in that moment, or we can be what God does with us. It's like, you've broken trust with me. Now you can ask for forgiveness and I'll give you forgiveness, but that trust doesn't just automatically come back. Like, trust has got to be rebuilt over time. And so here's what that's going to look like. Your phone's gone for the next month or whatever it might be. And then you stick with your consequences. Don't let it, that's the problem that most of us make, is that we just keep coming back on our consequences.
And then when you do, like if the phone is gone, then have fun when the phone is gone.
Right.
Like build that relationship up again. So your kids want to respect you and love you and be with you.
And that their infraction doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's over now. I'm not mad at you.
Right.
I'm not going to hold this over you and be, look at you. Because that is just going to create dissidence. That's just going to create that distance. But like, okay, we've had the consequence. It's over now. I love you. Smile, touch, do things together. I think thinking about too financially, just thinking about that is like, here's your domain too. Like our son is 16.
Yep.
He's going to be driving now. He's going to need access to finances. And so we opened up an account for him, but of course it has parental controls on it and we can see what's going in and out. And we've been teaching him, like when things come in that we tithe, we do give some of we save and tithe and then have fun with it. You got to be able to spend it.
Yep.
And so just these little steps of, okay, he was so excited to get that little debit card in the mail. And it's not obviously not a credit card, but a debit card where he can kind of see the money going in and out and he has access looking at it on his phone. And that's his little 25, we just opened it up with $25 and he has a savings account that he got to see how much we've been saving for him a little bit. So again, just having that transparency and that next little step. Our daughter, maybe a little bit later than normal, but like at 23, I think she finally was totally off of everything of ours. And we weren't, giving her money, but we could still kind of see her money.
Yeah.
She bought her first car recently and because of that and just because of some other things, but now she's totally off of everything of ours and adulting and paying her own rent and doing everything. It feels so good. Yeah. And we're really, really proud of her. But yeah, it's that kind of like those increments of, okay.
Baton moments where it's like, okay, that's on you now.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we have pushed into, I haven't even really thought about it till just now, is getting our kids to take responsibility to communicate with adults. And I feel like even with our fourth, we're doing it even earlier. So when you're not going to be at practice, you're going to call coach. You're going to text coach. Now, we just did this with Trey, our 13-year-old, the other day, who we're letting have a phone to be able to do this kind of communication. You're going to, what should I say, Dad? Well, what do you need to tell him?
That's good.
What are we, just think about it. I'm not going to be at practice tomorrow. Write that to him. You go up to the counter and go
order your food.
Order your food. You go down to the hotel counter and get the key since you lost yours. Right? So just there's so many different ways where they can start to interact with adults on their own instead of us always being.
And asking questions of help.
Right.
You need to, if you don't understand this, get help.
It's okay to ask help. It's okay to look on YouTube and find that help that you need to fix it, whatever it is that you're working on or that kind of thing. I think those baton moments are huge because I think we tend to think of adulting, for whatever reason, like 18 is this magic number. It's like, no. It's not about an age. We got a lot of 24, 30-year-olds that are still kids, that are still teenagers.
Very much so.
They just have not learned how to take responsibility for life.
And you know what? It's always easier just to do it myself because they're going to mess it up.
They will.
It's not going to go well. So by the way, I may follow up with the coach just to make sure that it was communicated clearly. I actually just did that the other day. But I gave Trey the responsibility to do it. And it is always easier to do it yourself. And that doesn't help them.
When you're teaching and it requires margin, right? So again, this stage of life, you probably have to have, as much as I maybe don't want it, I want my kids to just immediately know how to do that. That's not how it's going to happen. So your ability and your availability to follow up and make sure they are doing it and you're teaching, and maybe if they didn't, here's how you might do that differently.
Yeah.
Is really critical.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, isn't it?
It is.
Like, it's tiring.
Yeah.
To try to be a good parent is really difficult, and it makes you die to yourself. Just like we
Yeah.
talked about with marriage, I'm having to die to myself. And with,
Oh,
if
gosh.
we're going to do a good job with our kids where we can't predict the outcome, it is still just going to cost us in the short run,
Yeah.
dying to what I want to hold on to and control.
Yeah. Something that we have tried to do as far as just helping our kids grow up and become more independent is be very open about what we're going through. And so whether if it's a conflict,
That's true.
we will let our kids see us have an argument. We better make sure they see us resolve it though too. We
Yes.
don't want them just to see us argue and then, head to separate corners, but they're going to see us resolve it. They're going to see us ask for forgiveness. If they don't see it, we just go and say, hey, I really messed up today, and I just want you to know that I've asked Dad for forgiveness. He's forgiven me. So it's being really open about that.
Yeah.
So we've never had the traditional SEX talk with our kids. It's just been more natural in the flow. If they have a question or if we've seen something on TV, we'll go there and we'll start to talk about it with them.
And what I didn't tell you is that 2 days ago, I literally thought it is time to have that big talk with our 13-year-old
Yeah.
in ways that we haven't with the first three, because
Okay.
it worked. It worked with the first three, just as we're going along, kind of organically.
Don't use that word.
I can't use it.
Because I was you
Well-
say organic or natural, and I'm like, when it comes to SEX, there isn't anything that feels that way in the moment.
It
Yes.
does. Well,
Even if you're
Yeah.
like stopping and saying, "Hey, let's talk about what we just saw." Or
yeah,
heard,"
it's seeing
Yeah.
advertisements.
It's still
or
awkward.
Yes.
It's,
You got to
it's
push into that
unnatural.
awkwardness, right?
You
I'll
gotta push
never-
in the awkwardness.
I'll never forget one time we were in an RV and I had been in the back taking a nap, and I come up and Ed is talking to one of our boys who was probably 10 at the time, trying to explain a woman's cycle, and when you can get pregnant during that and when she can't. And I just was like, what is happening right
It
now?
was an organic
Yes,
moment,
it was an
Brian.
organic
It was an
moment.
organic moment.
And he was asking great questions. So all that to say is we have tried to just be open with our kids, whether it's talking finances, it's having a conflict, it's talking about SEX, it's whatever is kind of going on in life, to start to think of them as, you're going to leave our house someday.
Right.
And have we been open and real about what our relationship is like? Now, granted, there are some spaces we haven't let them into everything.
Yeah.
There are some things for just the two of us to talk about on the side.
Right.
But for the most part, they're going to become adults, and we want to show them what healthy adulting can try and look like.
Absolutely.
Well,
So-
maybe that's part of our stewardship, is to work on this.
Yeah.
Our stewardship to them is that we work hard at making sure that we're doing life and relationship well with each other, because that actually probably
True.
impacts them more than
The
all the
lecture.
different lectures and
It really
speeches
does.
that we get.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to lean into that because I
Okay.
remember graduating from high school. We're all heading off to college. You go back, talk to your friend. Oh, my parents got divorced.
Yeah.
Oh, my parents got divorced. And I started to realize there's this thing, when the kids are getting launched and couples are rediscovering themselves, something went wrong along the path. And we've alluded to that a little bit, but talk about how you keep that active, open, vulnerable conversation going, stay connected during this stage, which is going every which way.
Stay connected with each other.
Yes, exactly. Staying connected. What does that look like to fight for your marriage at this stage and make sure it stays healthy so there's not this terrible outcome or surprise and you look up one day and like, who am I married to?
Well, the word you just used is fight. So everything in our world, including our kids who we dearly love, are going to pull for all of our attention, for all of our time. And I think we've talked about it earlier, that it is a fight to say, I'm going to make you the priority over my kids, over my job, over my extended family, over my own pleasure. I want you to be the one that I'm fighting for.
Right on.
So really, we talk about this all the time at We Can Remember conferences, that the Lord is my number one priority. And then my next second is Ed. And then everything else falls after that. But so quickly do I find that my kids, whether they're nursing, toddlers, teenagers, even the ones that are still in college, want and will demand my time, where I have to say, no, I'm going to go hang out with dad, or dad and I are talking right now. But I think what the word you said was fight.
I love that perspective. God first, spouse second.
Yeah.
Talk practically how you fight for that, because probably they're not perfect moments.
No.
But you're going after it. So what are some, again, rhythms, steps, things you're doing deliberately?
Yeah, I think sometimes you do have to look at quality time over quantity. There's so many times you're spending more time, especially when they're real little. Like, and I was a stay-at-home mom for years. I work now, but when our kids were little, I mean, I obviously spent way more time with my kids than I did with him. But I did my best. We did our best to try to have quality time together. So, and using our words to say, no, dad is my number one. You know, our kids, we'd come in and we'd give each other a hug at the end of the day. And our little daughter, she's 24 now. She was like 4. And she would come and she'd be like, don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. And we just see that as a picture of, yep, we see you and we love you and you are so important to us. But this right here is the number one, because you are going to leave one day and we need to look at each other, know each other, and can smile at each other and say, I know you, because we've kept up our relationship. And so just continuing those once a week, once a month, once a year type, touch points of communication and enjoyment and laughter and fun and continuing to grow and doing things together, finding
hobbies that you can do just with the two of you, or just fun things that you just like. For us, we love to go to new restaurants, or finding those opportunities where it is just you two. And I think your kids, Ed, you alluded to it, one of the best things for their behavioral development, psychologists will tell you, has nothing to do with their activities, has everything to do with the couple, the security that they're living in. And the security is driven by the love between a husband and wife. Yeah. There's something about that ethos, that culture, that atmosphere that's created, like they feel safe. When mom and dad love each other well, it's like, okay, that's something I can anchor on to. That there's a quality there, but it doesn't get built without investment. Just like anything, like you guys are saying, I can't build a retirement if I don't invest now. Right. And so what's happening is, you're sowing seeds. All those families are sowing seeds of isolation versus intimacy. Right. And so you're going to sow one of them, and oftentimes you choose your kids over your spouse. You choose your job over your spouse. You choose everything else out of your. And so it's no wonder then after the kids are gone, it's like I don't even remember my spouse. And you think that it's because they've changed. Right. It's just because you haven't chosen to push towards each other.
Yeah, good. You haven't cleaved to each other well. Yeah. So I was thinking, even when Marshall asked it, I mean, if you haven't done a good job of developing your habits early, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be even harder to go through the teen years. Mm-hmm. Right. Like the couples that I know of that have fallen apart after their kids left, they started a long time ago to pull away from each other. This chaos of the teen years and everything just kind of covered it for a while, and now you're left with what you've invested in for the last 20 years. And if it hasn't been each other, then there's going to be consequences for that. That being said, if you haven't done a good job, sometimes I think we just need to give ourselves permission to start over again. And not right away run to, I'm going to start over again with somebody else. Right. Yeah. Let's start over again with each other. We didn't do a good job 15 years ago. We chose work or ministry or hobbies over each other. You confess that and you say, can we start again? Mm-hmm. And couples do that.
Yeah. We've seen time and time again.
Say it, Brian.
Yeah, we teach it at Weekend Remembers. It's amazing how many couples come with divorce papers in hand. And it's not because 3 days will say, these conferences are 3 days, they're at a hotel, generally nice, 80 places around the country, 50,000 people go to it a year. And what ends up happening is that they get to that moment where sometime in those 3 days, they see each other again and they're reminded, yeah, that's what I chose. Yeah. I chose you X amount of years ago. And they recognize that the cost of actually divorcing and leaving all of that history is a lot higher than the cost of going, let's recommit.
Yeah.
And
humble myself.
Yeah. Right? Let me humble myself. Let me let go of my pride. Let me let go of what it is I'm trying to change in you. And I'm just going to choose us. And you get the gospel's about fresh starts and new beginnings, Paul David Tripp says. And it's like, let's start fresh now. And now the hard work begins. We got to rebuild those habits.
Yeah. And the kids aren't around to watch it the way they were. but it'll still have a huge impact on
Yeah.
It will.
It will.
And will I continue to choose you as you change? So
Okay.
we're reminded about that person that I first married.
Yeah.
But will Ed still love me 20 years from now when I look different, when I think differently, when I act differently in 20 years in the future? So as I change, as we change, will we still say, I accept you. I love you. Maybe there's some things I like about the change. Maybe there's some things I don't.
But I choose
But
you.
I'm still choosing you.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Well, what a great word. Thank you for the wisdom shared today. But what a great word to share about the Family Life Conference and that there is hope and the idea of humility and starting again. So thank you both for that. Next time, we're going to look a little bit further into a new stage of life where some margin and time begins to come back. That'll be empty nesting. As we said, these habits, starting with early marriage and then this phase, continuing to lay that down. So we'll look at what it looks like next time to continue to press into that. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. To our audience, thank you for participating today. We wish you the best and God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust. Thanks so much for listening, and please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Trust and investment management accounts and services offered by Blue Trust are not insured by the FDIC or any other federal government agency, are not deposits or other obligations of, nor guaranteed by any bank or bank affiliate, and are subject to investment risk, including possible loss of the principal amount invested. The information in these podcasts is provided for general educational purposes only. It is not intended as specific individual advice. The client's experience may not be representative of the experience of other clients, and they are also not indicative of future performance or success. Opinions expressed may not be those of Blue Trust.